Nobody!
What's up, guys? Back with another video. Today we're talking about some news about Jeff Kaplan. Jeff Kaplan is the guy that used to work for Blizzard. He's pretty much an OG. He worked on World of Warcraft for a long time. Then he worked on Overwatch when Overwatch launched, and he was actually the head of Overwatch, and he was, well, the Overwatch of Overwatch. He was in charge of the game. There's an article from VGC that came out. You can click in the description on the link if you'd like to read the entire article. It says, quote, "The biggest FU moment in my career. Former Overwatch director Jeff Kaplan reveals why he left Blizzard," which, if you were keeping track of what was going on with Blizzard, about all the accusations and all the craziness that was going on in Blizzard, and then Blizzard got bought out by Microsoft, and Jeff Kaplan did leave Blizzard, and I think that since he left Blizzard, Overwatch has not been the same. I think Overwatch 1 was way better than Overwatch 2. I do play a little bit of Overwatch 2, but I really enjoyed Overwatch 1, and I think he did a great job in 1. So let's dive into this article and kind of see a little synopsis of what happened and why he left Blizzard. So guys, it says an ultimatum over redundancies was what, quote, broke him, he says. It says, former Overwatch director Jeff Kaplan has shed more light on why he left Blizzard 5 years ago. I can't believe it's been 5 years already. Kaplan left the company in April 2021 after 19 years working there. That is a long time. While Overwatch 2 was still in development. Now, in a lengthy interview with Lex Friedman, Kaplan has revealed the exact moment that, quote, broke him and convinced him to quit. It says here, according to Kaplan, the introduction of the Overwatch League, a global esports league for the game, made up of permanent city-based teams like a professional US sport, was a huge drain on resources and affected the development of Overwatch 2. But it was an ultimatum made to him by Blizzard's CFO that made him resign. Which I know that Overwatch 2 did become a pretty big esport. And I guess that he wasn't a really big fan of the esport way it went, I guess, from what this says. And maybe that's kind of what broke him out of the game. And maybe that's what became... he became very uninterested in that part. It says, quote, in 2016 and 2017, I felt very in control of the Overwatch team and of the game as a game director, working with Ray Gresco as a production director. Kaplan explained, quote, it felt like we were running Overwatch, and we were very successful and doing a good job. And I think the fans were happy. Quote, and then as we transitioned, Overwatch League was the best intention. My parents always said the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That was the Overwatch League. And it ended up being an albatross. And then Overwatch 2 was the same thing. So yeah, I mean, there were talks about how he was not a fan of where Overwatch 2 was going. And I think that it seems like he saw where it was paving when they made Overwatch into Overwatch League. It became a big esport. And then they saw what was happening in Overwatch 2. He was not a fan of it. He was disappointed in the way he was going. And I guess it looks like he felt like him and Ray Gresco kind of lost the direction, and they were not letting them pretty much be in charge of where Overwatch 2 was going, unfortunately. And then in the article also, he goes on to say, quote, and what ultimately broke me in my Blizzard career was I got called into the CFO's office, and he sits down and he says, he gives me a date, which at the time was 2020 and was going to slip to 2021, but at the time it was 2020. Quote, and he said Overwatch has to make redacted money in 2020. The amount of money revenue was redacted in the article, it says. And then every year after that, it needs a recurring revenue of certain amount redacted. And then he says to me, if it doesn't do this certain amount of money, we're going to lay off 1,000 people, and that's going to be on you. So that's pretty nuts that A CFO is saying that if a certain amount is not made, they have a specific number they want, and if that doesn't happen, there's going to be a specific amount of people that are going to be let go. And then he puts that on Kaplan. 1,000 people will be let go. That's pretty nuts. And to put that onto someone, that is extremely, extremely stressful. I can't imagine that amount of stress. Quote, he says, and that was just the biggest FU moment I had in my career. It felt surreal to be in that condition. As somebody who's worked on a lot of games, made a lot of games, you get in these meetings where they're like, Fortnite has 1,400 people working on it. If you just hire 1,400 people and make it free to play, we'll make that money, right? And that's the way they went with Overwatch 2, was I wasn't a fan of, that they made the game free to play. So when you make it free to play, it's going to be everything in the game is going to pretty much cost money, with loot boxes, with season passes, and you know the deal is, if you're a gamer, you know how it is when a game is free to play, that's what's going to happen. It says here, quote, I had believed I would never work any place but Blizzard. I loved it. It was a part of who I was, and I felt I was a part of it. And I literally thought I would retire from the place. I never thought the day would come, and that was it. I was like, we're done here. Luckily for Blizzard, that CFO is no longer there. So, you know, you have a job that you've been at for a long time, and you kind of see the future. You can kind of see that you're having very successful outcomes on projects, and in his case was with video games like World of Warcraft and Overwatch, and you can see yourself retiring, and then a CFO or your boss hits you with this kind of news and this kind of, you know, I guess something that you have to do in order to have, I guess, have a success in a game, that people don't get let go, and that's all on you. That's pretty nuts. And unfortunately, because of this, is why he left. He was like, I guess he didn't appreciate that came down on him. He's like, he's not going to tolerate it. And he left. And that's sad, because Jeff Kaplan, man, that guy did a great job with World of Warcraft. You can see how passionate he was in the interviews that you can see earlier on WoW, and how passionate he was on Overwatch, man. It's very disappointing that happened. It says, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, guys. I just read a little bit more. It says, earlier in the discussion, Kaplan explained why the Overwatch League, which ran from 2018 to 2024, started off as a good idea that he had backed, but ended up growing far too complicated due to over-marketing, ultimately affecting the quality of Overwatch 2, which at first I thought he wasn't really going to back. He didn't really want to back the esport of Overwatch 1, but it says that he did ultimately back it, but then it just went nowhere, and that's why it is where it's at. Quote, we had a coalition of the team that really wanted Overwatch 2 to build instead of the live events, Kaplan said, and then the executive pressure became monumental, and what would have been correct was to do more world events, keep it going, but the major derail was Overwatch League. Quote, the weirdest part about Overwatch League is I believe in it. I helped pitch it along with some other people. We thought it was the future of esports and doing regional-based teams, ensuring minimal player salaries and player protections. There was a lot of very good about Overwatch League. So he kind of breaks it down more that he was actually forthgoing with it. But it's just, you know, when executives get in charge and they don't know, and all they see at the end game is money, 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 and in this case, they just don't see what could come out of it, and all they see is money, I guess it's just, some things are just not going to work. And I'll end it here. It says, they went on this road show where they had a deck. This is all quote, and you could put anything in a deck and sell anything. And there were pretty much selling the Brooklyn Bridge. The Overwatch League was going to be more popular than NFL, and we got a bunch of billionaire investors in these teams. Man, this is crazy how much this has went, and why he just continued to have faith in this game. And I guess that the executives want money and the success of it, and they see like Fortnite, and then it just went nowhere. And it ends with this. I'll put at the end, I'm not going to read again, not the whole thing, just at the end here. It says, quote, I believe in Overwatch 2. I think we could have made a great. I have a lot of hindsight of how I would have designed the game differently with what I know now versus what ultimately we didn't ship. Overwatch 2 is out now, but it's not the Overwatch 2 we planned and announced. That's really upsetting, man. And I really do imagine what would have been Overwatch 2 if Kaplan would have stayed, where it would have went. Would it have been free to play? Would it have been a lot different than what we see now? And it's a fact. It is a fact that Overwatch 2 is not as popular as Overwatch 1. I still like Overwatch 1 a lot better, and it's just sad where this went, guys. If you let me know down in the comments what you think. If you play Overwatch 2, if not, if you liked Overwatch 1, if you kind of agree with what Kaplan, why he left, if you agree with after what we heard about it. It's just sad that it all came down to this, guys. If you like videos like this, leave a like. Let me know what you think in the comments. And thank you very much for watching, and have a great day. Bye.